Hi, I'm Celia. I've been a customer success engineer at Plotly for 3 years, and I'm making this series to share with you some of my tips and tricks to diagnose issues in a Dash app. In this video, I will show you how to use the Network tab of the browser's DevTools to get some information about your Dash app. I will be using Mozilla Firefox, so if you're using a different browser like Google Chrome, sections called Request on Firefox might look slightly different on your browser. Specifically on Google Chrome, the request section is called Payload. Apart from that, all sections are quite similar. So let's start. The browser DevTools can be used both in a development and a deployed app. For this demo, I'm going to use an app that has been deployed to Dash Enterprise. This is the same app that I have used in previous demos, and it has two sections. In the first section, as the title says, I have a working callback that involves a button and a div. When I click the button, the div gets updated with the number of clicks. The second section, as the title says again, involves a callback that will fail. Ideally, if I hadn't modified this app, when the user selected a country, the dropdown would be updated with relevant cities for that country. For example, if I selected Spain, I could get cities like Madrid here. However, since I have modified the code so that the callback will fail for this demo, I don't get any results here. Now we are going to see how this working and failing callback will be reflected in the Network tab. For that, the first step is to open the Inspect window by right-clicking anywhere on the screen and selecting this option. By default, the tab that I will get when the Inspect window is opened is the Inspector one, that's how it's called in Mozilla, or the Elements tab, that's how it's called on Chrome. I need to go to this one, the Network tab, which is called the same in both browsers. When I first click on it, I will see that it's empty. If I started interacting with the app, I would see some requests appearing here. For example, that's how a successful callback is reflected. However, when I want to debug an issue, I recommend refreshing the page so that I get kind of a blank canvas to start. You have seen how when I refresh the page, I get a big amount of requests here, but the most important one is the dash layout, which is the request that returns the elements that we see on the screen. All of these requests that we have seen here are the normal requests that we would see in any deployed Dash app, so that's expected. Now let's see how a successful callback could be reflected. I'm going to click this button again. You will see how a Dash update component request has been created. If the request has this Dash update component name in the file column, that means that it's a callback. The status in green of 200 indicates that it has been successful, everything has gone okay. Now I'm going to explain some of the details that we can get by investigating these sections. Regarding the callback, the most important tabs are the request and the response ones, and also the timings if you're investigating something related to performance. Let's look at the request tab first. In the request tab, we can see the information of the inputs and states, and also some details of the outputs that have been involved in the triggering of the callback. This is the same information that we would get from inside the callback if we used callback context. For example, we can see the changed proc IDs, which means the triggered ID, and we can also see all of the inputs and all of the outputs, like the component IDs and component properties that are involved in the callback. The amount of detail that we have for the inputs and the outputs is different. For the inputs, we get the component ID, the component property, and also the value, because the value is part of the information that is required to trigger the callback. However, for the output, we only get the component ID and the component property. We don't get any information about the returned output or the value of the children that is going to be set after the callback has run. All of the information that we get in the request tab is information related to the event that has triggered the callback. If we want to see information related to the return value of the callback, we need to go to the response tab. Here we can see that we have another dict-like content with the component property and the component ID here, and also the text that has been returned. That's the type of information that we get for a successful callback. Now let's see how a failing callback looks. I'm going to select one of the countries to see how a new request is created. If I select Spain, my country of origin, I get a new request here. It also says -update component because it's also a callback. But the status that I get here, apart from being different in the color, has a different value. It's 500 this time because it reflects an error in the processing of the request. By an error in the processing of the request, I mean that there has been some issue with how the code was running in the Python server that prevented the request from returning a successful or a valid response. That means that the issue happens after the callback has been triggered. So the request information is quite similar to the one in a successful callback. I have information about the component ID and component property whose value change has triggered the callback. I also have all of the list of inputs and outputs. For the inputs, I have the component ID, component property, and the component value. And for the output, or outputs in this case, I only get the component ID and component property. This is the same amount of information that we saw for the successful callback. The main difference is in the response tab. This internal server error message is what I explained before. Whenever we have a failed callback in a deployed Dash app, we should be able to find a corresponding error message in the logs for that app. So I'm going to go to the Dash Enterprise server. This is the app manager. This is where I can check the information for the deployed app. And I'm going to check the logs tab. This is what I mentioned. I can see that I have a traceback here for the error that I got. This line that references the Dash update component request marks the start of the traceback. If I scroll all the way down, I can see the specific error that happened. In the app.py file, in the line where I specified how to retrieve the cities from the dictionary with all options, the key that was used as a selected country, which was Spain with a capital S, was not present in the all options dictionary. As I indicated at the beginning of this video, this was intentional. In the all options dictionary, the keys are specified all in lowercase. So Spain with a capital S won't be found as a selected country in all options. I hope that was helpful. This video is part of a series, so please don't forget to check the description box below where I've linked other useful resources. Thanks for watching.